Jane, the progress of abortion in Chicago. One stand in history that changed both the medical and legal system would be the heroic actions of two students from the University of Chicago. They transformed abortion as they took the necessary actions by making it accessible to most women, and they later inspired other movements such as Roe v. Wade. In the United States, abortion was widely practiced before about 1880, by which time most states had banned it except to save the life of a woman. Anti-abortion legislation was part of a backlash against the growing movements for suffrage and birth control, an effort to control women and confine them to the traditional childbearing role. Laws prohibiting abortion subjected women to desperation, fear, and shame, and took a heavy toll on women's lives and health.
Before the formation of the underground organization referred to as Jane, which was designed to guide women before and after an abortion, women were at risk of infections and possibly even death if they were to receive it in the U.S., as it was so rare to find someone who actually knew the appropriate medical techniques to perform one. Some women had the luxury to be able to travel outside the United States and find a physician that was properly trained. The women that did not have these resources would resort to self-induced abortions such as inserting knitting needles or coat hangers into the vagina and uterus, douching with solutions such as lye, or swallowing strong drugs or chemicals. The stance on abortion has always been a controversial matter throughout the United States. Abortion has always been debated, as many people think and argue against the women who just want an abortion and not those who are in a life or death situation, such as ectopic pregnancy, which are pregnancies where a fertilized egg implants outside the uterus.
Abortion became illegal slowly throughout history. It began in one state and slowly dispersed throughout the nation. Connecticut passed the first law in the United States to restrict abortion. It prohibited the use of a toxic subject to cause miscarriage after quickening.
That we had some responsibility to stand up and say this is a wrong law.
Not only was there the need, but there was a philosophical obligation on our part, on somebody's part, to disrespect a law that disrespected women.
The movement for the legalization of abortion really began in the 1960s when Pat McGuinness founded the Society for Humane Abortion, later becoming one of the first people to publicly campaign for legalizing abortion.
One major organization or event that really made an impact on the matters of abortion can be the creation of Jane. Two female students from the University of Chicago funded this group in hopes of helping women by addressing the increasing numbers of unsafe abortions being performed by untrained providers who often had no medical experiences at all. Since illegal abortions were not only dangerous but also very expensive, the founding members of the collective believed that they could provide women with safer and more affordable access to abortions. During the years which Jane operated, the collective performed more than 11,000 abortions. Jane's origins began as Heather Booth, one of the students at the University of Chicago, had a friend whose sister was in need of an abortion, so she helped find an abortion provider. This then sparked Booth's interest along with her friend's interest on the subject, and from then on, they were dedicated to helping women. They began to perform abortions on other women after they were able to find a man who, although wasn't a licensed doctor, knew safe and effective methods of abortion.
Counsel the woman, and we'd make the doctor contact. And then once the doctor took over, it was out of our hands. But the big step didn't come until after we discovered that these doctors that we'd been sending people to weren't doctors at all.
And here was this ordinary person who was doing this abortion. And then the next step was, if he could do it, we could do it.
The abortion process for Jane was unlike most abortion clinics today. Patients discovered the services of Jane by word of mouth. No advertisement for their services were ever released, as the practice was illegal. Abortions were performed for about $100 per procedure. However, most women could not afford this and were either asked to give whatever they could afford or were given a no-interest loan funded through the collective. Upon arrival, the women in need of an abortion were assigned a counselor who would then lead them through the process. Women were briefed on the procedure as well as how to prepare for it and what to expect when it was over. Abortion counseling for each woman was a major focus of Jane. As we as a country began to take steps towards having abortion become legal, we finally had an abortion case go all the way to the Supreme Court, known as Roe v. Wade. This case began as Norma L. McCorvey, also known as Jane Roe, wanted an abortion, but it was illegal in Texas where she lived. Two graduates of the University of Texas Law School, Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington, then decided to bring on the lawsuit on the behalf of Roe as it violated her constitutional rights. On January 22, 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court case had been filed by Jane Roe, an unmarried woman who wanted to safely and legally end her pregnancy. Siding with Roe, the court struck down the Texas law. In its ruling, the court recognized for the first time that the constitutional right to privacy is broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether or not to terminate her pregnancy.
To reach its decision in Roe, the Supreme Court also drew on decades of case law that established that the government cannot interfere with certain personnel decisions about procreation, marriage, and other aspects of family life. In Roe, the Supreme Court found that a woman's right to make her own decisions about her pregnancy deserves the highest level of constitutional protection.
Immediately after Roe was decided, opponents of safe and legal abortions urged state and federal lawmakers to pass laws stripping away from abortion, which was their motivation as they wanted to ban abortion once again. Over the next 3 decades, the Supreme Court was repeatedly called upon to decide whether a wide range of abortion statutes violated a woman's right to privacy. While many of these restrictions were found unconstitutional, the court opened the door to the limits on the ability of low-income women and young women to make the decision to end a pregnancy in a series of cases beginning in the mid-1970s. State and federal bans on funding for abortions were upheld, and requirements were set up for women who wanted abortions. Although abortion is now legal, there are still many opponents to it, and they hope that one day the rights will be stripped away.
Through Jane and Roe v. Wade, abortion has gone through a tremendous transformation. As abortion is now legal, it has vastly impacted the advancements made for medical procedures, therefore improving its safety and effectivity. Before Roe, it is estimated that between 200,000 and 1.2 million illegally induced abortions occurred annually in the United States.
As many as 5,000 to 10,000 women had died per year following illegal abortions, and many others suffered severe physical and psychological injuries. While in 2009, the Centers for Disease Control reported more than 400 women had died from legal abortion since 1973, which is a significantly smaller number than before. Abortion will continue to be a controversial topic that will constantly be debated about in both politics and everyday life. Although the matter will be continually disputed about, we can't forget about the women that stood up for their rights and created Jane, who then went on to revolutionize both the medical field and legal system in regards to abortion. As these courageous women stood up for their rights, they have inspired other women to continue the fight for our rights.
I've always wanted to be a mother.
My husband and I were told that my ultrasound showed anomalies.
And then I found out my birth control had failed.
I have epilepsy, and an unplanned pregnancy put both my job and my health at risk.
The pregnancy was ectopic. The embryo had implanted outside of my uterus. I would lose my baby, and there was nothing we could do to prevent it.
One of the worst things about getting an abortion was actually having to say the word abortion.
Our only option was to drive across state lines to Atlanta.
I was made to feel like a criminal instead of a patient in need of care.
In the darkest moment of my life, I was denied the constitutional right that gave me options.
I was not ready to raise a child with the care and attention they deserved.
I'm Retta, and I draw the line for Rosario.
I'm Dasha Polanco, and I draw the line for Kaylee.
I'm Mercedes Mason, and I draw the line for Laura.
I hope my girls grow up in a world that protects the health care they need, regardless of how another might feel about why they need it.
When I'm ready to have children, they will be my gifts.
The women I love stepped up to support the decision I was choosing to make, because the life they were most concerned about was mine.
Our laws should work to eliminate suffering, not prolong it.
When exactly 1 year after my abortion, I gave birth to a happy, healthy little boy.
When it comes to protecting the right to choose, all I see are pros.
I'm Mary McCormick,
I'm Amy Brenneman.
I'm Elizabeth Banks.
I'm Bellamy Young.
and I draw the line for Suzanne.